Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about unmasking Texas and Mississippi, but Dr. Richard Bartlett joins me in studio, along with Texas State Senator Bob Hall via Skype, to talk about COVID policy, where are we going, where we're going, and finally, Dr. Seuss, the Babylon Bee, and American education. And of course, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
And hello again and welcome to America Can We Talk and to today's First Five. I'm Debbie Georgatos. I mentioned yesterday on Texas Independence Day that Governor Abbott, the Texas governor, announced that he's basically lifting all of the prohibitions and rules related to COVID in Texas, not immediately, but a week from, it'll be a week from today now. Next Wednesday, all of the rules, mask requirements, social distancing, et cetera, are being lifted. And so that was an exciting thing. I also want to mention, and I want to talk today about the policy. How do we get free? How do we get back to being America, back to being Texas after all of this lengthy shutdown? One point I wanted to make of what the Texas governor did say yesterday in his otherwise happy and positive announcement was he still thought that it would be, and so he's saying basically no mask mandates, no social distancing mandates, but he said, he understands people are concerned about COVID mitigation strategies, and county judges might be worried. So he said that the policy is going to be if COVID hospitalizations in any of the 22 hospital regions in Texas, they divided this massive state into hospital regions. If COVID hospitalizations in any of the 22 hospital regions in Texas rises above 15% of the hospital bed capacity in that region for 7 straight days, then a county judge in that region could engage in further COVID mitigation strategies. However, he said, after a little fiasco that faced Governor Abbott last time he had punishment involved, he did say a county judge cannot put anyone in jail, thanks Shelley Luther for that, or for not following COVID orders, and no penalties can be imposed on people who don't wear masks. So he's basically going to force the county commissioner courts to go after businesses and put the onus, the force on them. So that was a little but, and I do want to talk about that. There was certainly some pushback against Governor Abbott. Some of the left-leaning counties in the state had statements put out by the county judge or some other high-level official, basically, and mayors in various places saying they sure were going to continue to encourage people to wear masks, and they were very negative about this mask, freeing us of the mask, talking about ideas like this really undermines all the sacrifices that have been made by medical professionals, et cetera, in getting us this far. And then the state of Mississippi chimed in. Mississippi decided largely to let the mask requirements drop to end these kind of rulings. And in Mississippi, this actually goes into effect today. By the end of today, this is going to happen. So Mississippi, and again, both getting pushback. And I'll tell you one last little thing in closing out today's First Five. In the time period, two last things. In the time period, we have had all these COVID restrictions in place in states around the country. Our culture has changed to a certain degree. Friends of mine who are otherwise kind of conservative, friends of mine who've been fearful about COVID are saying things to their friends and on social media to the effect that this is irresponsible, and they certainly expect their fellow serious, responsible adult friends to continue wearing a mask, continuing to socially distance. I always try to chime in and I say, until what? Until when? Until there's no more COVID? What is the end point in which you would agree that life can go back to normal? And of course, there isn't really a good answer because no one can picture when we'll be normal again. And the second point is that for those individuals, there's concern that some individuals who are county judges, county officials, can play with numbers a little bit, can look at, how exactly are we measuring ICU bed capacity and availability, play with numbers, and end up saying, oh, who knows, after all, we didn't meet the standard the governor has said, so after all, we have to have more mask mandates, more rulings. Even though these county judges cannot now, or as of a week of today, cannot mandate masks, they can make life very difficult for business owners, telling them they have to force masks, which in turn creates stress between the business owners and the public. Because I can tell you already in Texas and all over America, people who don't like the mask mandates are simply going to choose businesses that will let them come in without a mask on. And so this whole COVID episode in the world, but particularly in America, has really caused many people to re-examine the question, number one, how far does the government go? How far should they be allowed to go in mandating all sorts of rules to keep people safe in a public health crisis? Certainly has raised questions about how our reaction to COVID, as we learn more and more about efficacious therapies that deal with COVID, maybe we didn't have to continue the stringent lockdowns and mask requirements that we had. And it's also gotten society thinking again more broadly about how much is our role in dictating individual citizens, dictating, arm twisting, mocking, whatever the term is, people who don't agree with your view about masks. And so it really it's been a kind of a culture altering time in America the last year. And so close out the first five, just say, I'm glad, I'm in favor of freedom. I'm grateful every time there's a move toward freedom. I hope we Americans can learn a lesson about the kind of what I view as tyranny that came out of some elected officials, and hopefully get those elected officials to come around to seeing the notion of what is the right and right and not right role of government, or wrong role, so that government officials understand they don't have the right to impose long-term restrictions on the freedom of the people, even in the course of a serious health situation. I'm Debbie Georgatos, and that today, my friends, is my first five. Okay, so I told you we have the star of the show. We have a guest in studio. Love when he's here. Much better to have any guest in the studio rather than have them on Skype. So we have Dr. Richard Bartlett in Midland, Texas. He was here. In fact, I remember the date. I'm pretty sure July 2nd. July 2nd last year, where he was kind of springing the news on America that he had discovered through the practice of medicine in Midland, Texas, where he lives, that he had discovered the use of a widely available, inexpensive asthma drug, budesonide, when inhaled, was a fabulous treatment for people struggling to breathe who had COVID. So this was a big day when he was here, and we talked a lot about what he discovered. And so now here we are. We're actually coming up on, like I said, I can't do math in my head. 9 months later, 8 months, whatever the number of months is, and a lot's happened since then. So I want to talk with him about kind of these mask mandates, where they've gotten us, and what we should be doing now. So without further ado, Dr. Bartlett, hello.
Debbie, thank you for inviting me back today. We've got breaking news that we're going to share today. Almost 9 months ago, we were sharing breaking news then that would have been altered our experience as Americans and worldwide with COVID. Breaking news today is what we're going to share that people may not see on the TV, in magazines, or in mainstream newspapers. And so I'm excited to tell good news. Last time
I'm in favor of good news.
Last time we were here in July, we said we're not helpless or hopeless. That was my message. And that we have some valuable tools already as physicians that are intuitive, that are readily available at every pharmacy, that are inexpensive and safe. And I would have thought that everybody would be excited about that. Yeah. But it's been an interesting experience ever since we broke that news. When we did that, that interview went viral, almost 5 million views before YouTube deleted it. Yeah. And called it dangerous. Right. But today we have great news that we're going to share, that Oxford University, which is the oldest university in the English-speaking world, with 72 Nobel Prize laureates from 1096, did a randomized controlled trial, which is the top shelf, creme de la creme evidence, scientific medical evidence, showing that inhaled budesonide can prevent hospitalizations by 90% for COVID patients.
I want to jump in and say, I sent Matt, I sent you, I think, late in the day, this is the headline, right?
Yes, that's one of the many headlines that is on social media, but it's still not going to make it in mainstream media so far. So we got some big news. We're going to talk about that. We're going to empower the patients and the doctors. That's what we're here today to tell them, that we're not helpless or hopeless. We've had something that is an answer to end this pandemic. And so 90% effective. But you know, after we did that viral, it's been interesting. We've had some immediate pushback. It's been censored, it's been deleted, it's been suppressed, it's been targeted. And so, Matt, would you show clip 1, please?
That video,
an actively practicing ER doctor and the medical expert for Fox in San Francisco. Let's get into this viral video by Dr. Richard Bartlett, who claims to have the silver bullet treatment for coronavirus, using inhaled steroids budesonide. That simply isn't true. That's simply false. Very common medication that nobody knows about. I just have to laugh.
But others in the medical community aren't convinced it's what it's cracked up to be.
There is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be.
There is no silver bullet response to the virus at the moment, and there might never be.
If you're hearing things about things that are just so too good to be true, it probably is. And
there's no scientific proof,
Since March, he claims inhaled steroids are the cure for COVID-19.
And I wish it was as simple as that.
The CDC also says there is no known cure for COVID-19, so we can verify that claim is false.
That people who are thinking about maybe getting some off-label use of budesonide, that do not do that. We can't tell you that that's going to help you, and there's even a possibility that if you use these steroids too early or too much of them, that you could harm yourself and worsen your chances of surviving COVID-19.
Is there any downside to there are people that are believe that budesonide and taking zinc is working? Is there any downside to doing it?
You know, there's a placebo effect to make you feel better and less anxious, but in reality, Matthew, it doesn't have any effect.
And to think that that simple medication is the cure that could have saved 500,000 people.
Wow. I'll tell you, my very fine listeners, I had not seen this video before. I didn't know. I mean, I'd seen the different characters in it, mostly all of them give it their statements of denouncing it. That is so powerful. I'm going to I know Dr. Bartlett wants to expand and expound on it, but I just want to say, from July 2nd of last year, when we did this interview here, when the interview went wild on Washington, we know it got to the White House. We know it got to the very inner circles of leadership of the United States Congress. People saw this. And one thing I hope we hit on among many today is, how in the world could something be so denounced by so many alleged experts, and now we sit here today and Oxford has said, actually, you know what, about 90% of the cases could have been treated by this.
You know, Oxford University says 90% of COVID hospitalizations could have been avoided with early treatment with inhaled budesonide. Where are people dying with COVID? Are they dying in their kitchen? Are they dying behind a desk? Or are they dying in a hospital? We're at, the last doctor made an interesting point. He said 500,000 deaths. We're at over 500,000 deaths in the United States from COVID. You know, 90% of that, according to Oxford, 90% of that is 450,000. Could 450,000 deaths have been avoided with an early treatment with an inhaled steroid? Oxford says 90% of the hospitalizations could be avoided. Does that mean that they could have been saved? That's 450,000 American lives this last year. After we shared that message and it was mocked and ridiculed and we were attacked.
Oh yeah.
And so where do we go from here? This is great news. It empowers the politicians. Of course, we mentioned on that first interview that I had already sent the information to Senator Ted Cruz. Have you heard anything from Senator Ted Cruz about this? I haven't.
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet.
I still give him credit.
I'm sure he's working on it. I'm sure he's working on it. How long does he need? This pandemic is starting to wind down. The numbers are starting to go down because of herd immunity and early effective treatment with effective therapies, like Oxford University says, decreased hospitalization by 90%. That's moms, dads, grandparents, children that died that might not have died, is what that sounds like to me.
It surely does. You know, we have many directions I want to go with this, but I do want to ask you, so all these people who are on this little clip we just played, they are trained doctors, they're educated, they have some role in
medicine. I don't know, is Dr. Fauci trained?
Well, he has a doctor by his name.
Okay. A lot of people have doctors. There's Dr. Seuss, Dr. Fauci.
I have a JD from law school. Am I a doctor? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, my thoughts are, many times they would say, I'd have patients calling me or patients' families calling me. And we had a website up for the last 9 months with testimonials from researchers, from doctors, from patients, from professors, all there. And that's the website is called budesonideworks.com. That website has all that information there. This was not hidden. The interviews were viral. And even though they'd take them off the platform, others would post them again. So this has gone around the world 5 times. And so it hasn't been hidden. But where are the doctors? The doctors are saying we don't have enough evidence. Really? Because and during that first interview, you offered to place my published paper on your website for America Can We Talk. And so it was there for anyone to read or download. And that had 50 referenced articles from JAMA, from NIH, from reputable sources. And so would you show clip 2, please? Really? They needed more information? That was already available. And yet for the last 9 months, patients have been getting pushback saying we need more evidence. That's evidence right there that was available from day one, that we made available. We wrote the paper, published it, and you had it on your website for anyone, and you got a lot of traffic.
Oh yeah, got a lot of traffic. I still get emails, I mean, still today, because the show, every old show is up online at various places, YouTube, my own website, AmericaCanWeTalk.org. I still get new emails. Hey, I just finally saw this interview from last July. Can you send me the paper?
You know, interestingly, I'm at the hotel here. I came in today, the day after Texas Independence Day, and my phone rings. It's a stranger from Houston, and she says, Dr. Bartlett, I just wanted to thank you. I saw that interview with Debbie Georgatos on America Can We Talk, and she said, when 6 of our family members from 3 generations got hit with COVID and got very deathly sick, I knew where to go. And thank you. All of us survived and did well. Thank you, Debbie, for having that information available.
Well, I'll tell you, and actually I want to tell our listeners, I have had more people, I have personal friends call or text or email and say, you know, I heard you know something about this budesonide thing, you know this guy, Dr. Bartlett. I have referred so many people to Dr. Bartlett. I've referred friends, family members, people who just email me who are listeners. And another report I get back, beside that people said I got better and I'm so grateful, I feel better, is that I can't believe what a nice guy he is. I mean, because there are a lot of doctors, you can't really get through, you can't respond. It got to the point where you were able to send people off to a doctor in their area who would be, if there was one, who could prescribe budesonide. But you actually, it's like the Marcus Welby doctor you always want people to be, actually responding to patients and listening to their stories. And the stories, they could really bring tears to your eyes. They're amazing.
Yeah, you know, we have good healthcare providers all over the world right now that are using budesonide and saving lives quietly. The pandemic is decreasing. The numbers are decreasing. And there's a reason why. Vaccines haven't been out long enough to have this effect. It's herd immunity. And the people that are living, many of them had early effective treatment with effective therapies like budesonide. According to Oxford, that decreases the risk of hospitalization or even an emergency room visit or even an urgent care visit by 90%, according to Oxford. I think they know what they're talking about. 72 Nobel Prize laureates. I think that's a pretty good source of information.
I love it. And this Oxford study, for friends on our website, americacanwetalk.org, on today's on the homepage under shows, drop down list of links. We link to this study because it really is really important to understand. It is not some whoever heard them fly by night university. That this is the premier, the creme de la creme, serious substantive research, putting out the headline. In fact, I'm going to ask Matt to put that headline up again just for a moment for our listeners to see it. Common asthma drug cuts need to send COVID patients to hospital by 90% and shortens their recovery time. And this is Oxford University. And then, so this was very recent. This last month.
That's 2 weeks ago. But we said that same thing 9 months ago, and we showed evidence. You remember clip B, the second clip, showing all 50 references from NIH, from JAMA, from other reputable sources. The evidence was there, and we did not hide it. But why is this being suppressed? Why is it being deleted? Why would we withhold that from the American people? But we don't have to do it anymore. Yesterday was Texas Independence Day. I'm glad our governor in Texas
Finally.
restored plans to restore some of our freedoms again that were taken from us. That's appropriate on a Texas Independence Day.
It is, but that's actually was one of my next questions for you is, because I mean, we've had you in the show. I've had Dr. Simone Gold, Dr. Vet Lozano, numerous other doctors who have treated patients who are very ill with, or just the beginning stages of COVID-19 or seriously ill, and have had recovery after recovery and are praising budesonide or hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. But the point is, these efficacious therapies are out there. So that is the question. What has happened to the medical industry that there was so much pushback against these remedies, which doctors are supposed to try to use what they learned in medical school to deal with a new situation? So when you did that, you found how effective it is. What is, and I know there's no one magic answer, but what is the answer?
I'm going to say, during our first interview, I said that on January 1, 2020, our American healthcare system got hijacked, basically. We used to be the best healthcare system in the world. We used to have the best survival rates in the world. People used to, Yeltsin, president of Russia, came to Houston to have heart surgery. He could have gone to China right across the border. We were the premier, #1 best healthcare system in the world until January 1, 2020, when several people showed up that we had never heard of before to be the advisors on the healthcare system, and they knew more about your healthcare that you need than your personal physician that you have an intimate relationship with, and who knows you and your family and the medicines you're on. And they said social distancing, masks, shut down businesses, bankrupt businesses. This is the result of all this. And you know, they didn't have a randomized control trial from Oxford University showing 90% effectiveness. They just did this.
Yeah, I want to jump in and clarify that, or repeat it. It's a great point that what they said must happen, masking and social distancing, there's no study to prove that works.
They certainly didn't have a 90% success rate from Oxford University.
Yeah, I'll remind you, I was telling you before we started today, Dr. Simone Gold was on the show numerous times, but again last week. Two things she said. One is she said, because I was asking her about a quote that had been, I think, in the Wall Street Journal saying, you know, from a doctor saying basically, you know, the pandemic is over, the numbers are dropping, pandemic is over, and or it's on its way out. And she said, no, it's over. I mean, in terms of a spreading, growing pandemic, it's over. And so I thought I would share that with you.
Yeah, you know, everyone knows multiple people who have recovered from COVID. That is what causes herd immunity. Because someone will get exposed to it, they already have immunity to it because they've already recovered from it. And so they can't get sick again and they can't spread it. The virus will be dealt with their immune system. That is immunity.
But you know what, that's interesting. Even on that point, I've seen some of the people who were just latched on to vaccines as the only solution, sticking with masking and social distancing. I've seen those kinds of experts say, Well, yes, we think that usually if you've had COVID, you probably have, immunity.
There have been many things said. That
well, I was going to say, they're trying to say, don't believe this immunity stuff.
Right.
It's like,
it's like forget the last 50 years of medical facts and science, is basically. They're saying immunity is only for 3 months. Where did they pulled that out of the thin air?
Is that an Oxford study?
That's not an Oxford study. Yeah. And, interestingly, Anthony Fauci knew about budesonide for COVID and actually addressed it and said that it was basically a placebo effect, meaning it didn't have any effect. He's been doing this for 40 years. He's been chasing vaccines and being the authority on infectious diseases in America for 40 years. And he didn't figure out he wasn't aware of what Oxford University just showed, that 90% of patients that have COVID that are treated with inhaled budesonide would be able to avoid hospitalization, which does that mean they might not die?
I would think so. I was going to say, in the hospitalization thing, what the people were dying from, I don't know currently what they say, from what aspect they're dying, but once you put the people on those breathing machines, what's the name of them, the respirators?
On a ventilator. And on a ventilator, in the beginning of this, Debbie, when we were talking, there was early reports that 90% of the people put on a ventilator, 9 out of 10 people put on a ventilator as the strategy at the beginning of this pandemic, were going to die.
Never recovered.
90% death, guaranteed at the beginning of this with a ventilator, 1 out of 10 living. So contrast that with early treatment, not even needing to be in the hospital, using a little inhaler, a little puffer like you see first graders using. Using it as a nebulizer will even give more medicine to the targeted tissues in the lungs. And I'm having greater than 90% success. Mine is way beyond that. But it's because this is just adding budesonide, which I said was the key to this strategy. But I also had some other things in the protocol. Antibiotics that protect from secondary bacterial pneumonia. I explained that on that first interview.
Yep.
And we had that in our paper. And so we're addressing that as well. This study doesn't include the antibiotics. Also, I said aspirin to protect from clotting, because you have pulmonary emboli, clots in the lungs, heart attacks and stroke due to the hypercoagulable state, a fancy word for clotting happens easier because of thromboxanes, chemicals released from the lung tissue. Again, budesonide, inhaled budesonide, targeting the tissues that are releasing the cytokines. We talked about in that first interview a cytokine storm, which is where all these inflammatory chemicals are released from the lung tissue, go into the bloodstream and cause the kidney failure, the heart attack, the stroke, the clots, all the other problems that kill people. All those symptoms, the fatigue, the fever, are all from the lung tissue, the respiratory tract, those chemicals being released. If you use the inhaled budesonide, you're putting the medicine right to the source without the risk of total body steroids.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, when they said, breaking news from Oxford University, dexamethasone IV steroids can help decrease the mortality rate a little bit, back in June last year, everybody jumped on that immediately. But it wasn't 90%, and that's when you're in the hospital already, and you got to be in the hospital to get IV steroids. And that for everybody with diabetes, that causes their sugar to go out of control. It turns down their immune system, makes it easier for them to die from any infection. Sepsis, bacterial pneumonia, every infection risk is increased. And it decreases your ability to heal. It decreases bone density and muscle mass. Who is the most at-risk population? Senior citizens. Do we want to decrease their bone density and muscle mass?
Right.
Do we want to decrease their ability to fight infection?
You know, it's been an amazing time in America. I do want to talk about all that you've uncovered and now the proof how efficacious it is. But as a country, how we move forward and how we get past this. I mean, I mentioned the first 5 today, how even these governors are they're almost being arm twisted to come around and say, okay, we're going to open up. But getting society back to normalcy, and I want to tell you something Dr. Fauci said. By the way, when is the last time Dr. Fauci actually treated a patient? Do you know?
I don't know if he's treated a sniffle in the last 30 years. I don't know. I haven't heard of him treating a patient.
Right, he's
even
a
with
researcher,
the cold.
right? Or he's a supervisor of researchers.
You know, I never heard of him before this pandemic, frankly.
Wow.
And I'm a doctor who's been practicing basically 30 years.
Yep.
And, you know, Governor Perry appointed me to the Health Disparities Task Force to help make sure no Texans are left behind, because there were gaps in our care where certain populations were not receiving quality care like other populations. And so he asked me to be on that task force and give him advice. And that was a 2-year appointment. Every year he asked me to be on again for a total of 7 years. And we made great strides to improve health care for all Texans. As a result of that, the commissioner of the Texas Health and Human Services gave me a Meritorious Service Award. So I have been doing this for a while, but I'd never heard of Fauci before this.
That is quite astonishing. I meant to want to introduce you today. I was excited to jump in, but I know when I first, to be really clear with our happy listeners, when I first met Dr. Bartlett, I was at a meeting, and literally the meeting was over, and someone walked up and said, I really want you to meet this guy. He's from Midland. He's here in town. He's really got this great news about budesonide. And I just decided on standing there after the meeting thinking, you know what, if you can hang around until tomorrow, I'll love it, come on my show. So we did the great show that went viral. But I really didn't know much about you. And after that, and prior to the next time you came on, I looked into your background because, you know, I like to know who's on my show. And you have been I mean, this is not, you just finished medical school last year and just figuring out, you know, how to drive to the hospital. I mean, you've been practicing a long time, chosen by Governor Perry, chosen by your local affiliate doctors.
My peers asked me to be the president of the County Medical Society for 4 terms. And so I've been in leadership. I've been trusted by my peers, by my patients, by my community. Over 20 years as a CBS medical expert in West Texas.
And so this idea that you have something so efficacious and you've been telling people, and it's taking so long to get the American medical community to wake up, to respond. I'll tell you, I have a friend who's was in and out of the hospital with COVID, and her doctor was willing to prescribe budesonide, but the hospital wasn't going to permit it. She had to get out of the hospital to get budesonide, to be able to. So what is the reason the hospital would do that?
That's a common story. Basically, patient rights have been trampled since January 1, 2020. Across the country. In the United States, the AMA Code of Medical Ethics requires all doctors to include the patients in every healthcare decision and to inform them of every risk, benefit, the cost of every treatment option. Has anyone been told the cost of every treatment option, that remdesivir is $3,100 and the hospital stay that's required, all the cost of a ventilator, and also if there's any benefit to anyone financially. They're supposed to give all that information according to the AMA, American Medical Association. Also hospitals, many of them are under joint commission, and that requires them to teach all the staff, not just doctors, about patient rights, which including the patient and the patient's family in every treatment decision. People are being kept out of the hospital. They can't even get a hold of their loved ones on a ventilator. How do they get a hold of the doctor and the patient? And are the doctors and the nurses calling the family members and keeping them involved in all the treatment decisions? That's against joint commission. There are medical ethics committees in hospitals, and you can ask for a medical ethics consult if you're having trouble with the hospitals. But there are some shining examples of hospitals like Frio Regional Hospital out in Pearsall, Texas, outside of San Antonio, who emptied their ICU, we talked about that, emptied their ICU in 48 hours of COVID patients when they started using budesonide.
That's the greatest story. Again, the name of the hospital is what?
Frio Regional Hospital in Pearsall, Texas, a small hospital who looked at the evidence. They looked at the papers. They got the staff together. They unanimously decided this makes sense. This is intuitive. This makes sense with our training. And what do we have to lose? And so I tip my hat to them. I'm very impressed that they did the right thing. They treated the patients. And they didn't wait for a randomized controlled trial, which took 9 months to get here. 450,000 might not have been hospitalized. We had over 500,000 die in the United States. And 90% of that, could they have lived? That'd be 450,000 Americans. You know, someone who I met at the beginning of all this is a hero in Texas, Senator Bob Hall. And he has been standing up for patient rights, and he's heard my message, which has been consistent from day one.
Yeah, and I tell our listeners, I'm so sorry, I got so carried away talking to Dr. Bartlett. Senator Bob Hall, who was just on the show, I think about 2 weeks ago, is standing by. He's down in our state capital in Austin because he's actually a serving state senator. He's on, we have him on Skype. There he is. Senator Hall, I'm sorry, we got really talking, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today. I want to just turn to you and ask about your work in Texas. I mean, you've been really active in Texas, trying to protect the freedom of doctors in Texas to be able to prescribe what they want to, what they feel is called for by their patients. So can you describe the kind of episodes, not by name, but generically, what happened in Texas that you had to intervene to get the doctors back to being free to prescribe what they wanted to?
Well, first, Deborah, let me thank you for having me on here and tell you that I have it does my heart good to sit here and listen to Richard, Dr. Bartlett, my good friend from Midland, who I've been working with since he was on your show, and trying to get the word out to see, all the malignment that he has had and the other doctors who have had other approaches, all of which have been viable, been proven to be viable, but didn't have the quote clinical study tied to it. Now, it was okay for CDC and FDA to use things like remdesivir. They didn't have clinical studies either, but they're on the government side. But the thing we faced with here is this issue. We've just got too much government. We don't need the government in to the depth of our lives the way it is intruded by using the COVID opportunity to be oppressive to the people. This thing was mishandled from the very beginning, from the top on down, through every level of government, assuming that the government's role was to take control of people's lives in order to so-called protect them, when it's the government's job to inform people, let them exercise their individual rights, their own good judgment, and make decisions for themselves based on the risk available. That's been the problem we've had, and that's one of the reasons I've been working with the doctors that I came across early on. It was just a few weeks into this that I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to learn of the first drug that was out there that was talked about was working with Dr. Yvette Lozano down in Garland, just part of Dallas, and was very successful in treating patients at that time. And then others came online with similar treatments, some varying, but all very, very well convinced that they were seeing personal success. I witnessed some of that success, and I've witnessed a ton of it since then. And I did a show now months ago in which I pointed out that what was happening in the world. This is not something that was just discovered here in the U.S., that there were therapeutics, that there are treatments out there. What Dr. Bartlett came up with was one that's very excellent, probably one of the safest ones out there and one of the most effective. But there were others that were effective to some extent and were being used by countries around the world in which there were data was streaming in that's showing that their death rate was like 5 to 10% of what we were experiencing here in the United States. And so I did shows. Matter of fact, I did one Facebook post that got over 1 million views explaining how America was lagging behind several countries like Costa Rica, Honduras, India, the countries that we would hardly think could lead us in anything, were out there being successful because they put the people first. And how we allowed this thing to be driven by the pharmaceutical companies, I will tell you, I truly believe after almost a year being in this thing that this entire thing was fabricated by the oppression of the American people, of scaring them to death, first of all, with data that was absolutely false, leading them to believe that there were going to be millions of people who were going to die within just a few weeks if they didn't follow these government lockdowns and shutdowns and wearing masks and recognize there's no treatment. And then the hospital standing behind that, taking patients in and refusing. And this is what really bothered me. We have hospitals and doctors out there who refused to recognize that there were any therapeutics for the patients. They'd put them in the hospital, give them a comfortable bed to lay in till they needed a respirator, put them on a respirator till they need a ventilator, put them on the ventilator, all the time making more money off of what they're able to charge for them being there, with bonuses being paid by Medicare for a COVID patient. And then when they take them off the ventilator, 90% of the time putting them in a hearse and hauling them away. And that was the process, that was the treatment that most of our hospitals and doctors were given. I mean, we had doctors that were absolutely refusing to treat a patient. My suggestion to them, I said, if a doctor told me that, I would find me a new doctor. But it's I find it very disappointing that our government would allow, but we do know that the pharmaceutical companies in this country have a stranglehold on the legislators in Washington, and they seem to have a pretty strong hold on those in the states also, because this has all been designed around getting a vaccine. When as my understanding, I'm an engineer, I'm not a doctor, and so there's nothing that's medical that comes out of me, except that it's really seems to be what I have read, that vaccines are supposed to be for things that we don't have any treatments for. And this is not one of those. They have purposely withheld the medical treatments from the public, blown them off at every level of government, pretending like they don't exist. We've allowed people that have a doctor behind their name at the federal level. And right here in Texas, the same thing. There was not one doctor involved in the decision-making process that had any recent clinical experience in here, just so the pharmaceutical companies could come up with an expensive drug vaccine that it was clear they were on their way to trying to make this mandatory. And it looks like that the word that got out from the doctors like Dr. Bartlett and Dr. Lozano and Dr. Proctor and Simone Gold, and I could name 30 others, including Stella Emanuel and Dr. Richard Urso down in Houston, and Tom Reed, and all those that were treating patients, and the word getting out that there are therapeutics out there that can significantly lessen the impact of the COVID, and people would not be dying. It just tears my heart out that because of what the government has done, we have 90% of the people have died as a result of it, unnecessarily. And I just appreciate, Debbie, what you've done in trying to get the word out. I credit you, your program, and Dr. Bartlett and those like him who have stuck their neck out, who've been experienced the heavy hand of our misguided Texas Medical Board and the misguided Texas Pharmacy Board, who stepped in and tried to aid the pharmacies by cutting off access to therapeutics at the pharmacy what doctors were prescribing. And it's people like you, Debbie, and Dr. Bartlett, by standing up and speaking out about this, has managed to save as many people as they have. So that's my humble opinion.
I should have said more introducing you for our listeners. In addition to, this is Senator Bob Hall, has been on the show many times. I was telling him before he came on today, how and all the big issues I'm worried about that keep me awake at night, he is the leader in the Texas legislature, or at least among the small handful of leaders. As a Texas state senator, he is rock solid, he is fearless, he keeps pushing, even when, and this is a good example, COVID, where the trendy thing to do is to say, well, I don't really know, I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to defer. Seems like Fauci has it under control. Instead of taking the initiative to read and learn yourself, talk to other doctors, take to heart what they're saying. So Senator Bob Hall has been a fabulous advocate for doctors who are trying to say, we have good ways of handling and dealing with, and we can prescribe therapeutics for COVID. We don't have to just surrender to the hospital or a vaccine as the only two choices. We can use existing therapeutics. So Senator Hall, I want to ask you, since you're, thank goodness you're in the Texas State Senate, is there legislative change needed for Texas and other places? Are there specific things you need to do to make clear in the future this couldn't happen? Or is it more just needing to wake up the medical industry and the governing agencies over them to make sure they will respect the right of doctors?
Well, Debbie, I kind of a two-part answer to that. Yes, I believe there are things that we can do here in Texas so that we don't just have to follow through with whatever Washington tells us to do. You know, a lot of this pandemic had to do with the money that the federal government put out there. Anytime the federal government offers money to the state will do anything they can to get their hands on it. But we'll be holding hearings. I'm on the Health and Human Services Committee here. We've got a fantastic chairman, Senator Lois Colcurse from Brenham, who has been in the legislature for a number of years. She understands this problem just as well as I do of what we have and what we have to do to try to change things. We'll be having hearings, hopefully starting within the next 2 weeks, on what went on. We plan to have doctors coming in, having patients coming in. A number of people have been involved in it. Absolutely, I think there are some things we can do. I think one of them is we're going to have to find a way to hold the medical professionals, particularly the hospitals, responsible for the decisions they made to withhold treatment from these patients who desperately need it, and it resulted in dying from it. And we can't ever let that happen again. But the problem we've got is at the federal level. The pharmaceutical companies absolutely have a stranglehold on the elected officials in Washington, and they're going to have to work out how we restore the rights of the people to that have been robbed by the fact that the pharmaceutical companies hold such a strong hold over them.
I love that answer, and I'm going to turn to actually, go ahead. One quick point, Dr. Bartlett.
Yeah, Senator Hall is Exhibit A that an elected official can do the right thing. I'm saying today, the day after Texas Independence Day, Governor Greg Abbott has to be aware that Oxford University showed 90% of patients with COVID could have been prevented from going to the hospital, the emergency room, or urgent care. 90% of COVID patients would not have to go to the emergency room, be hospitalized, or receive urgent care clinic visits even, if they got inhaled budesonide early, which was our message from the beginning. And today, it's not hidden. Oxford University has proven it in a randomized controlled trial. Let's all watch and see if Governor Abbott mentions this fact and promotes it for our people in Texas. Let's watch and see if the lieutenant governor, if the other state senators and state representatives, I know Louis Gohmert is promoting it.
I do that,
and
yeah.
you know, that is a man with courage, just like Senator Hall. He stands out. Where are the others? Let's hold these elected officials accountable, because they can dictate that you're going to have to wear a mask. They can dictate that you're going to do these other things without the 90% success rate in a randomized controlled trial that we have with budesonide.
And connecting those two things, if everyone in Texas and other places had gone along with listen to your advice, recognize the efficacy of budesonide, you would have not needed to have the long-term imposition of mask mandates and social distancing, because the problem wouldn't have been so big. I mean, I think the masks were there to prevent spread, because if the spread was all going to be lethal. But if you thought, well, it's not going to be lethal, we're going to treat it.
Major errors
from the beginning. Errors is right.
Like we know that children are not going to die like adults with COVID, that they could have been a buffer in the herd immunity, because they get it, and many times they don't get sick at all. They don't even have a sniffle.
And they could have stayed in school.
But we closed the schools.
Yeah.
We took them out of the equation. And we did everything wrong, basically, to develop herd immunity. And if someone gets sick with COVID, 9 out of 10 died if they were put on a ventilator at the beginning of this. They weren't going to contribute to herd immunity because they weren't going to come out in the public.
Yeah.
But now we have early treatment with an effective therapy that actually has been used around the world for the last 9 months. This has not been hidden. There are other countries that have embraced this. There are doctors around the world using inhaled budesonide. And here's an interesting fact. In Ector County, where I'm from, less people died during the pandemic in 2020 than in 2019, 2018. That's against the trend.
Oh, because of flu.
Let me tell you, Alex Watkins, Dr. Alexandra Watkins, I had her on a radio interview yesterday, has treated over 2,800 patients with COVID with this therapy plan. and one of them had one lung. Okay, if you have one lung and COPD,
Yikes.
and you get COVID, well, I'll tell you what would happen if Anthony Fauci was your doctor.
Yeah.
But Alexandra Watkins has had success with treating all kinds of patients. That's just one provider. We have many providers in Texas doing the same thing. That's just 2,800 with one provider. I think we have a dozen states covered at the budesonideworks.com website. There's a provider tab, and I think we have providers in a dozen states. You can imagine the impact. When I can think of 5 providers just off the top of my head here in Texas, that's just a small sampling of the providers that have treated at least 12,000 with this protocol.
I want to hit one more quick topic. I didn't realize the time flies when we're talking, and I'm going to drop my third topic for today, wrap up this because it's time to roll. But I do want to talk about Dr. Fauci spoke recently at a conference, and I think it was in Scotland, and he was talking about the future and basically asked, when do you think that we, America, and the people can get back to normal? And they're saying, don't you think by, maybe a year from now? So he's talking about March of 2022. Do you think we can get back to normal? And his answer was, no, I don't think so. Don't think you can guarantee that. So I want to start first with Senator Bob Hall, because I know he's taking time out of his busy legislative day. Just want to ask him, the notion of getting back to normal seems like a pipe dream. But, what is it going to take, do you think, in kind of culturally, politically, legally, to get life back to normal in Texas?
Debbie, it is going to take a change of attitude from our government leaders to start telling the truth to the people out there. We could start getting back to normal tomorrow. We are well on our way, as Dr. Bartlett has said, to herd immunity, to the other systems, therapeutics out there. And the fact that people are learning that you can just avoid the COVID if you just have a really good immune system, or you can avoid getting very, very sick by making sure you take those vitamins out there like zinc and vitamin C and D3 and have your immune system strong. You're far less likely to be affected by it. But what we have to do is unwind the fear that has been put into people with the false information with regard to catching the COVID and the seriousness. I mean, we've gone through this thing and we've got something that has a 99.9% survival rate. I mean, there was no reason for us to ever have even gotten into the lockdowns, mask, social distancing. All of this that we've gone through should have never, ever happened. The businesses have been destroyed. It is time to open it up. We could do it right now if the government would just accept the fact that it has misled us down the wrong path, and it is time to unwind the fear and let people know it's okay to be okay.
I love that answer. Okay, Senator Hall, I can't thank you enough. I know you're actually in Austin. You are a Texas State Senator. You're every conservative's rock star senator. So thank you for doing all that you do. Thank you for being available today. We're wrapping up out of time on this show. I really, we got going and went a little bit long. I want to end with Dr. Bartlett. What is your thought about, how in the world do we get back to normal?
Well, you change the leaders, the spokesman for healthcare. When you have a healthcare leader like Anthony Fauci, who has said, don't wear masks, they don't work. And then he says, wear a mask because it's a symbol that we're in this together. And then he says, wear a mask. And then he says, wear 2 masks. That's within a year's time. He's one of those answers might be right, and all the others can't be right if one of them is right. And yet he has no science behind it. And he doesn't have Oxford University randomized controlled trials saying as evidence behind any of it. So he never offers the science behind his statements. We need new leadership. And
love new leadership.
Yes, and secondly, our elected officials need to step up and do the right thing, like Senator Hall, like Louis Gohmert, the U.S. representative from Texas.
There should be not just even every conservative, every Republican, every elected official with integrity ought to be looking at this and saying, you know what? Forget about finger pointing how we got here. Now we know.
Do the right thing now.
Let's
Let's end the pandemic, and we can. And it's already on the way down. And if you have something that Oxford University has proven is 90% effective against COVID, that's pretty good. I haven't heard of anything else out there that has been. They've promoted remdesivir. It didn't have the randomized controlled trial of 90% success. That's Oxford University. If you have a problem with it, then talk to Oxford University. But, you know, we're not helpless. We're not hopeless. This message today is to empower the people with breaking news that they may not hear ever in mainstream media. But this is life-saving. Some people are surviving COVID. Only 1% die, but there are many people that have long hauler syndrome where they're debilitated. And so early effective treatment is the winning strategy.
I love that. Honestly, what a sad commentary in America, all the people who lost loved ones because we didn't have the right information and we went down wrong paths. Dr. Bartlett, I know you drive in from Midland to do this show. Thank you so much for coming here today and for being with me. I so appreciate that.
We have good news. We need to spread it, shout it from the rooftops.
Yes, in fact, that was one I was going to say in closing in this show before I get to why it matters to you. Get this study that I talked about, or this article that talks about the study. It's on our website. It's probably available. It's probably available somewhere for you too, but on our website, americacanwetalk.org, you can get the study. Take it to your doctor. That's what several of my friends did. They took Dr. Bartlett's paper about budesonide to their doctor, saying, "Look, this is what I want to do." Take this study to your doctor, your healthcare provider, your hospital official to say, right here, Oxford, there is a role for people to play in pushing back against this medical tyranny. So, again, thank you so much for joining me.
Socialized medicine is when the government knows more about your health care than you do or your doctor. And that's what happened January 1, 2020. And we need to take our healthcare system back.
Amen. Amen to that. Folks, I close every show by telling you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. I'm going to drop, I said at the beginning, I was going to do a little riff about Dr. Seuss and real education, but we'll save that for another day. I'm just going to close the show by telling you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. So we talked about unmasking Texas and Mississippi, but momentum, political pressure shifting toward the lifting of COVID restrictions. Florida and now Texas are bellwether states. Pressure rises on blue states. Data and science, herd immunity, vaccines, therapies, case numbers, hospitalization rates, all back up reopening. Fear and totalitarian impulses back up lockdowns, social distancing, and masks. California Governor Newsom, who, by the way, weighed in and said he thought Governor Abbott did something very dangerous. That's why I'm mentioning him. Newsom said Abbott was dangerous to reopen the state. California Governor Newsom betting his career on justifying fear and need for government control. Will Californians recall him? I hope so. Will other blue state governors pay a political price? Mainstream media, Democrats, and big tech will keep hyping the fear, variants, etc. Caution, transparent political agendas have crushed public health credibility. And that, my very fine friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Thank you so much for tuning in every Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time to America Can We Talk, where I always talk truth about America because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.